team and a player that's fascinating. Raiders and Ashton Jeanty. So hear me out. Geno Smith, who you know, when Geno throws on play action, Eric, his passer rating is like 106. He's very circumstantial. Pete Carroll's success in his career has been with Marshawn Lynch and Reggie Bush. When Pete's got a run game, he can own the clock, special teams defense. Pete doesn't want his quarterback throwing 42 times. He does not like mistakes and turnovers. And when Geno is throwing and everybody knows he's throwing, Geno gets in trouble. It's very Sam Darnold. And maybe it's overdrafting, but do you think Pete Carroll would say, listen, Chip Kelly in the run game, Geno with a running back, I know nobody's Boise State, he's 5'8", but do you think Pete would just say, for the quarterback I'm married to here, we have to have a run game. I'm taking the Boise State kid. Do coaches think like that?
Yeah, look, if you think the guy is Adrian Peterson, then yeah, you could definitely be thinking that way. But I went back and I looked at all of Pete Carroll's drafts, and when he's drafted, I looked at 12 or below when he's been in that spot, whether it's been the Jets, the Patriots, the Seahawks, and he's drafted offensive linemen and defensive backs. And typically you go, I think there's a defensive lineman there as well. But the moral of the story is he went either big or he went cornerbacks. And those guys typically are harder to find than quality running backs later in the first round, later in the draft. And I would imagine he'll stay true to form and probably, fall in one of those two positions as opposed to Jeanty. My concern on Jeanty is he doesn't really catch the ball very much out of the backfield. You look at him versus Saquon Barkley, it's about 6 yards less per reception in college than Saquon had, and it's about half as many catches as his final season. And that's a big part of it. And Geno needs to be able to throw the check down to a running back that has the potential to, break big plays, and you just haven't seen that from Jeanty. And that it's hard to not want that whole complete package.
Well, I mean, you can't just, this isn't, apples to apples here. That wasn't necessarily what was being asked of Ashton Jeanty. So to just kind of use these bottom line stats as an indicator of what, Jeanty can or can't do I'm not looking at it through that lens at all. I think it does still remain to be a fascinating, philosophical, mentality. That those aren't the right words. I can't think of what up. Like the philosophy of the NFL in terms of like how you draft, in terms of do you draft? If you believe that Ashton Jeanty is this great running back, do you draft him at the top of the draft, or do you get a position that's a little bit harder to come by and draft a running back that maybe is 90% of Jeanty, right? Like that still remains to be such a common philosophy where it's just like, no, we can still get a running back that will have a ton of impact. And you have some of these outlier backs like the Derrick Henrys of the world, like Saquon Barkley. But outside of that, you're going to have a running back. They're going to have some games where they go off for 150. They're going to have games where they get 80 and 90. Like, it just is what it is. They're going to get around 4 yards per carry. Some games it's going to be 6 yards per carry. Some games it's going to be 3 yards per carry. Even Saquon Barkley in the Super Bowl was like 2.5 yards per carry. But then he's also, throughout the playoffs is ripping off 60+ yard runs. And it's just, it just continues to be that dynamic. Like when we look at this, right, we have Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry. And obviously Saquon Barkley definitely had the most exciting year. His team won the Super Bowl, had the most highlights out of all of these players. But when you kind of start to when you look below Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry, who also had the most carries out of any of these other teams, you get down to Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Taylor, Gibbs, Josh Jacobs, right? Like, was there this massive difference, for instance, between Josh Jacobs and Kyren Williams, right? Like, did you need to draft one running back number 5 overall or whatnot. Like it's just it is interesting. Aaron Jones, like they're all within range. The big question is right, how often are you using them as a receiver? Not to mention how much can you rely on them in terms of just the carries itself. Because you have Jahmyr Gibbs, who had only 250 carries. Compare that to Saquon Barkley, who had 345. Those things also matter too, and that's going to be different for all different types of back, your size, your strength, the style of running you do. And I'm not sure if Gibbs missed any games last season. For some reason, it's not telling me. This should have games played, but it doesn't. And I don't remember if Gibbs was down for like a week or two or whatever. And so yeah, it is interesting, but it's tough because I believe that Saquon Barkley is much better of a running back than, say, Najee Harris, Tony Pollard. Like, this I'm not, this isn't anything too, groundbreaking here. But what would Tony Pollard look like with the Philadelphia Eagles? And we know that he would probably be better because the team's better, the O-line's better, there's more weapons and all that. But it doesn't mean that he automatically rushes for 2,000 yards. Doesn't mean that he's ripping off these 60-plus yard touchdown runs that really changed, games in the regular season, but especially playoff games. We saw what Swift looked like with the Philadelphia Eagles. We saw what other running backs in the past looked like with the Philadelphia Eagles, and they also had a great O-line during those years. And yet it was an absolute game changer with Saquon Barkley. Even if we go back, look at this. This is now for the Baltimore Ravens in 2023, right? So before Derrick Henry, you have Lamar Jackson leading the way, 821, a total of 2,661 rushing yards. And you now add Derrick Henry to this mix, and you jump up to, nearly 3,200 yards. And now, just like that, Derrick Henry is the monster with, over doubling what Lamar Jackson did as a runner when the year previously he was the leading rusher. It just when you really knock it out of the park with the running back, it really becomes so much greater of an impact than I think people are willing to actually really admit. I think at the end of the day, if you have a running back, like let's say all the top running backs are, let's just try to be real simple and basic with this. They're 100, right? They're 100. Derrick Henry's 100. Saquon Barkley's 100. And I think that between 90 and 100, that gap is massive. It's actually more equivalent to like a 50-point swing rather than a 10-point swing. Even though you're still maybe getting 90% of what they're doing, the impact that they have on either a game or an individual play that then obviously impacts the game significantly, it becomes night and day. And if you have a running back that's 80, that's now in the 80, and so now they're just 10 points below this 90 category, that is pretty close. They're so much closer each other that the cream of the crop running backs, when they're on the right team, it's just night and day. But now with that same kind of logic, you can't just put Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry on any old team. You can't just put them on the Carolina Panthers and boom, now they're playoff contenders. Now they're Super Bowl contenders, right? It doesn't work that way either. But when you bring a running back to a team that like kind of has their act together, I mean, it could just transform everything. It can just be absolutely positively night and day. And if you have a quarterback that's 90, you're like, yeah, this is great, and we're going to win some games. But if we have or did I say quarterback? I meant running back. But if we have a running back who's 100, it's like game over. I mean, like, it's like game over, right? It is truly just like game, set, match, right? So that's the whole thing. And if you believe that Ashton Jeanty is that running back, this continues to be my take. Even if you still need to boost like your offensive line or whatever it may be, you have to still maybe get that 100, that running back that is going to just dominate, and you're gonna have to just go, maybe just wait until next draft or go in free agency, whatever it may be, to like potentially boost your O-line, or whatever you think is also holding back your team. You're just kind of reversing it. Like John Middlecoff recently, I just heard him say this, and he said, I think it was about Ashton Jeanty, and he was kind of talking about Saquon Barkley, and he was saying, the Giants drafted Saquon second round, was that the right decision for them? And he was like, probably not. Like, it didn't work out for them. And it's like, I disagree with that, because if they were a better run team, they would have drafted Saquon Barkley. Now they got him. And what? Saquon, I think he got drafted in 2017 or 2018, whatever it is. He's played like 6-7 seasons. That's 6 or 7 seasons you have to boost your O-line, to build your... you have plenty of seasons, plenty of years to build a team that could be significantly better, that then allows Saquon Barkley to just spring forward. You had plenty of years to figure that out. There was plenty of years that you could have either moved on from your quarterback, went out again in free agency, drafts, trades, whatever, get a significantly better offensive line. Like, there's plenty of years to do that. Plenty of years. Sometimes the play is to draft the Saquon Barkley, and you got to just wait 2 or 3 years for him to truly be Saquon Barkley. Sometimes that's the play. And it would have been for the Giants if they didn't continue to fail in all the other aspects. That's just that's the reality. But it's, so it's a fascinating conversation that's happening with running backs and continue. So it's not even a devaluing of them, but it's recognizing, okay, the top 5, because even when we say top 5 running backs, like, I still think there's such a massive drop off between some of these running backs, even from 1, 2 down to like 3, 4, 5. Like, it just becomes night and day. Again, like, I think some of these running backs, do I still have the list up? Josh Jacobs. I think Josh Jacobs is a workhorse. Jonathan Taylor. Like, I think, again, and I'm just keep using the Eagles as an example, because obviously Saquon had the best year and set records and won the Super Bowl. Like, I do believe that these running backs would have had legitimate success with the Philadelphia Eagles. But I am still of the camp where I'm like, Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry are truly the ones that took this above and beyond. It's not to say that these other running backs wouldn't have had success. It's not to say that the Eagles still wouldn't have won a Super Bowl, right? But it's just like, I'm just not going to pretend that you put any of these other like top 10 running backs and just pretend that they would also have a bunch of these 60+ yard touchdown runs, that they would have had over 2,000 yards. Like, I just don't necessarily see it that way. And you can't say, oh, well, what did Saquon Barkley do when he had an inferior, O-line, or what did he do with the Giants? And, was Derrick Henry able to turn the Titans into a Super Bowl contender? It's just, it's a little bit more complicated than that, honestly. And so that's why it really does just get boiled down to is like, how special. It doesn't matter what your philosophy is. It's just truly, how special do you believe Ashton Jeanty to be? If you truly believe him to be special, elite, and just of the highest level, you can't use the logic of, well, you can get a pretty awesome running back like in the late first round, or second round or something, and you can get 90% of Ashton Jeanty in the second and third round. And it's like, that might be true, but there's a massive gap. There's such a massive fallout, and you just might have to wait until the next year to potentially build your O-line, or like I said, any other position of need. But yeah, I don't know. That's why this conversation specifically with the Raiders I find so interesting, because it's really going to come down to philosophy. Honestly, I think it comes down more to philosophy than actual like evaluation of Ashton Jeanty. Because I think in that same podcast, Middlecoff talked about like, oh, I would draft Jeanty at like 15, but like not 6. And my logic is just kind of like, if you're the Raiders and you believe Jeanty is amazing, it's like if you would draft him at 15, then you should probably draft him at 6. Unless there's someone else in the draft, like you were just like, there is an absolute, like a center, you know, whatever it may be, like there is an absolute monster who's going to be a brick wall for the next 10 years. Let's go. Like, okay, I can see that argument as well. But yeah, I don't know. I think it probably depends on where you think you're at, what you think you're building, and what type of timeline. I reject the notion that drafting Saquon Barkley for the New York Giants was the wrong move, especially if they were better run and, you know, had better drafts in the years past, you know, after Saquon. So you just can't look at it through this just like one lane, you know, one direction road. You kind of have to look at it from both sides. But yeah, the more you talk about it, honestly, the more you kind of trip over the conversation, because you're, again, it's coming down to so much more about philosophy rather than evaluation. Like that's so much what this conversation has become more rather than how will Ashton Jeanty's game translate to the NFL? Are there any concerns, you know, where he was playing in college compared to the type of talent? Look what he did against Penn State. It's just so much more of like, should you draft a running back here? And especially if you still have need, what do you do? So find it interesting. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about Ashton Jeanty being drafted to the Las Vegas Raiders? Do you think Pete Carroll will go against? I mean, I guess on one side it's both. Pete Carroll's like, you know, wants a big running back, wants his quarterback to throw a little bit less. Then according to Mangini, the way he drafts, he doesn't draft running backs in those positions. So which side do you think this coin will fall? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.